for everybody else that's now being called back to the office, we got to do some Terrell's tips, man, on getting back into the workplace. Like a lot of employers are asking employees to come back into the office in 2023. What are some tips that you have, Terrell, for reacclimating to dealing with these in the office when you get back in there? Because you ain't had to deal with them for 2 years.
A few things you got to do. First, you got to start with yourself. And what I mean by yourself is you have to remember how to iron clothes again. You have to remember how to make stuff match and make stuff look good. You also have to reevaluate your commute because you haven't had to do it in a while. You forgot about traffic. You forgot about those things. So get yourself together and get yourself prepared to go back to work. So number one is yourself. Number two, you're going to have to decompress all that anger you had on those Zoom calls of people you can't stand, because you didn't have to have a poker face for the last 2 years. You could just sit there, camera off, giving the screen the finger when somebody starts talking that you can't stand. You got to remember your poker face, and you got to be able to sit there and smile and, hey, that's a good point, Chet. Thank you for that. Anyone else have any feedback? Like, you got to remember how to handle that. And then Chet. I did say Chet. And then number three, and to me, this is the most important. If you don't want to go back to the office, quit. What you can't do is get on LinkedIn and get on all the social media and talk bad about your employer, about them making you come to the office. If you don't like it, quit. Now, we talked about this when the pandemic started. Right. And I said, right now, it's going to be remote. But at some point, these companies are not going to be able to get out of their leases for those office spaces that they're paying for. So after a while, they're going to say, hey, you need to bring your ass back to the office. Right. And you got to have to do it. If you don't want to do that, that's great. Start looking for another job, find another job, give your notice, accept the other job, and go work remote. But don't get mad at the employer and be like, y'all got to realize, and my kids, and your employer doesn't care about any of that. So deal with it.
Well, it's interesting, especially like you said about that poker face, because you're right. How many Teams calls have you been on where the only people on camera are in management? What I love to do on those calls, though, was I used to love to text people in the middle of a call and look for them on the screen and see when they read the text and laugh. And watch them try to hold that poker face on the Teams call. Now, that's going to be fun to try to do in person.
Yep.
Especially if they don't silence their phone.
Yep. Oh, I've done that many times where you're just texting and just waiting for them to see it. Yeah. You see the look in their eyes where you're like, trying not to laugh. That is awesome.
Hey, Deja Vu says, have a pre-rehearsed apology for the office, Karen. Yes, indeed.
You're going to need one. And it's going to be funny. Your level of tolerance is going to be a lot smaller going back to the office now, because 2 years ago, you just knew I had to deal with it. Right. You've not had to deal with Karen for 2 years. As soon as she says something to you, you're going to be ready to lose it. What's interesting for me is I started my job remotely. And so now that I'll be going back to an office, there's all these people. I have no idea who they are. I've been on calls with them maybe, but now I get to actually meet and see people. So for me, it's a first. I don't have anybody that ever annoyed me because we were remote when I started.
Imagine if you had not shown up, if you were one of those people who kept your camera off all the time and you walk in the office now.
Well, because I think they'd be surprised I was black. I think that would be. I think that's.
There's a black
you don't sound terrible. Wow, you don't sound. How do I say this? I'm like, well, that's my work voice. Sorry.
Catch me after 5.